absence. I've got Brian Baverstock. There's a clash with another meeting, so he's an apology today. And not an apology per se, I don't think, but we've got, we have Scott Semple doing the PT Fast update instead of Paul McGovern. And welcome to Douglas Balfour, who has just dialed in. Ali.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm as well, the Chair of the Board, Kirsty Darmott, is ex officio. She may join at some point throughout the meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Item 3 in the agenda: consideration of and decision on any items to be taken in private, other than those already on the agenda. Anything? No. Good. Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting on the 12th of May. I will do the usual and just go through them page by page. Just shout out if there's any errors or amendments. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, and page 6. All content? Yep. Right. Take them as approved. Thank you. That moves us on then to agenda item 6 and the action log. I would normally ask Ali to go through this, but I've got a couple of questions on them. So Ali, I'll just fire in with my questions. So the item number 9.1.1, the portfolio office progress update. Obviously, we've had quite a few conversations recently, and I'm just looking to see when we think the new completion date might be for the strategy.
I think that's open at the moment, Fiona. I think there's some discussions to be held with the SLT members in terms of what it is that we can do with the resources that we've got, or whether there'll be any potential further resources, because it influences in terms of, you know, what our strategy is going to be, what capabilities and services that we're going to provide from the function. I mean, the document itself is 90% complete. It's doing the rounds with SMB members in terms of their own input and consultation, but fairly content with it. So I think it's a case of sitting down with the DEP and with David based on what's going to transpire over the next few weeks, and then just put a finalisation to that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And apologies, I should have reminded you all to introduce yourselves when you're commenting. Slightly out of the way of doing these virtual meetings recently, so if you could just introduce yourself before you speak, that would be good.
Chair,
thanks, Andy.
Chair,
Nick, yeah.
Nick Barr, board member. Your request was for a date. Are we going to set a date for the next meeting? Sorry, we've got a date for the next meeting. What I mean is, are we going to set a date for that action to be complete by the next meeting?
Yes. Yeah, that would be perfectly reasonable. I would have thought next meeting's not until November. Yeah, I can see Andy's nodding. Cool.
Yeah. Fiona, could I perhaps just comment on that as well, please?
Yeah, of course, sure. Yeah.
Sorry, I can't keep my virtual hand up, so apologies if I've just jumped in. So,
that's okay.
Interim Deputy Chief Officer. Yeah, just to support that in terms of that being concluded for the next meeting, I'm happy to obviously put that date. And as Andy alluded to there, there's discussions ongoing with SMB and SLT, and clearly are taking on this role and put perhaps a bit of a renewed focus on the programme portfolio office, particularly in light of the resource spending reviews, both in terms of the strategy, but also the resources to execute that strategy as well. So just to give some comfort to board members that has been progressed at pace.
No, that's excellent to hear. As you know, we're all very, very supportive of the work that's ongoing, and I think, to be fair to Andy, and Curtis and others, it's been hard work making the amount of progress that you have so far. Yeah. And absolutely hear and applaud the focus that you're giving it, Stuart. And as ever, if there's anything the committee can do to help push that, just ask.
Absolutely. And apologies again for jumping in. If we could just echo that sentiment in terms of the work that Andy and Curtis have done to get us to this point has been exceptional, particularly faced with limited resources. So I don't think we should lose sight of the progress that has been made, and I know that board members acknowledge that as well. So thanks for that, Fiona.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, thank you. The next one is fine. You're going to give us a Portfolio Office internal audit report is on the agenda. Andy, you're going to give us an update on that later on, aren't you?
Yep.
And the only other thing I was going to comment on the action log was a thank you actually for the detailed update on the Youth Volunteer Scheme evaluation report. I think it was you, Angelina, that talked about anchor organisations, and hopefully it answers what you were looking for in terms of the update that's in the action log. Yeah, I can see you're nodding, so that's good. That's it as far as the action log's concerned, unless I've missed anything, Ali.
And no, Chair, just to confirm again that the committee are content with all the position statement updates, and we will recategorise the items that have not been marked blue as completed and make sure that that's updated accordingly. So other than that, the committee are content that the rest can be removed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
And it's Ali Cameron, Board Support. Thank you.
Thanks, Ali. Okay, right. Senior Management Board action log. Senior Pack. Stuart, is there anything you would like to call out on this?
The only thing, Chair, that I would highlight is in terms of that first action, it talks about a risk spotlight. It's just to confirm that that risk spotlight that's going to SNB and following on from that to the Service Delivery Committee is in relation to GTAC tablets. Yeah. Because you should probably be aware there's some cross-cutting issues across various forums and projects in terms of the GTAC tablets. So that's what that risk spotlight will be on, Chair.
Okay, so thank you.
Nothing to comment on the remainder, but happy to answer any questions you may have.
I don't have anything. Does anyone have any questions on the SNB action log? No. Good. All right, so that takes us on then to agenda item 8, change portfolio portfolio office project dashboard. Andy.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Andy Main, Head of Portfolio. So what I would say is for members just to note the contents of the dashboard. Always happy to invite any questions that you have for either I or the exec leads on the projects that we can answer. What I would say members should kind of note, there's a transition of reporting, and you'll see that some of the projects have moved from what we've traditionally reported on to the new reporting format, and for those in the new reporting format, those have been taken into the private session later on this afternoon, but more than happy to invite any questions forward from committee members. What I would, yeah, I'll leave it at that for just now.
Okay, thanks, Anne. So just to reiterate, we'll have further opportunity to question in the private session. Yeah. Okay. Any questions for Andy? Don't see anybody waving at me. No, good. Thank you. Stuart Nicholson, low carbon appliance project dossier.
Thank you, Chair. Colleagues, Stuart Nicholson, Executive Lead now for the low carbon appliance, the proof of concept. The dossier very much recognises the movement from the build phase, the initial dossier that was proposed at the back end of 2021 when the appliance was in the build phase, to the introduction of the appliance within service delivery and ultimately going operational. And therefore the executive lead has moved from assets and Ian Morris to myself in service delivery, and hence the sort of reintroduction of the dossier. So in terms of the stage and the build, very much on time, to the budget and the quality at this stage is exceptional, been working very closely with Emergency One, and therefore there's been a full and comprehensive handover to myself from Ian Morris. So the next stage as we move into the introduction is very much focusing on the engagement both with internal partners in such as training and operational crews, and working with the people like Curtis from the portfolio office, but also a real tight working relationship with the external partners involved with this project, including the Scottish Government, Transport for Scotland and Scottish Enterprise. So it's incorporated within the dossier, but Curtis and Portfolio Office have been heavily influential in terms of those next steps as well, in terms of looking at how we maximise the opportunities and the innovation for this appliance. That'll start towards the back end of August and September, with a number of workshops to be held where sort of intelligence and information will be captured, and also the learning at this stage to be shared throughout the sector and with wider stakeholders. So and also, you know, in terms of the dossier itself, it's just recognising that sort of physical project management as we move through into the delivery stage, or we're in the delivery stage. So there's a number of areas around training with fleet, driver training, and the National Training Centre here at Cambers-Lang, and how that's carried out. But essentially, hopefully the dossier provides a good sort of overview of where we are and where we're up to, and the next steps and the considerations and the sort of thorough approach that's been taken with this project. And happy to take any questions naturally. The bit, sorry, that I've missed out, sorry, as well, is just that evaluation and capturing that evaluation. So the vehicle is planned to be delivered into service in the latter sort of months of this year, November, December. Have a period of 3 months at National Training Centre for the operational crews to get used to the vehicle, and any training to be carried out on the vehicle before it goes on the run as an operational appliance, sort of March 2023. And throughout that period, we have now started sort of with the portfolio office, really looking at what evaluation looks like. What I can report so far, and there was a visit with ourselves and the operational crews last week to the vehicle, and it has been received extremely well by the operational crews, and there's a high degree sort of enthusiasm regarding the appliance. But happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Stuart. Couple of things from me and then Nick. But I guess the two main things that struck me was, one, there is mention of the 250k that SFRS are putting into the pot, if you like, on top of the 500k that's already been provided by Transport Scotland. But I've got no sense from what I've read as to whether we're within that financial envelope of 250k, and I haven't got a sense of how many resources. So, you know, how much is it costing, and are we kind of in line with what we're expecting is one question. And I guess the other question, and I know Stuart Stevens, that you've already made comment on this just the other day, in terms of this feels like it's been flying along under the radar from a Change Committee point of view. And I guess, how do we ensure that doesn't happen again? Because it's a pretty significant piece of work, and yeah, I don't quite know why it's not been on our table before. So the cost question first.
Okay, so the cost question in terms of that build, yeah, very much in line with the budget that was projected. There's nothing at this stage to say that it'll be outside of tolerances with the budget in any way, shape or form. and hopefully that sort of just provides a little bit of reassurance with that aspect. And then the second aspect is, I suppose, providing again the reassurances moving forward that it won't fly under the radar, as is sort of suggested. I was keen when I took sort of the executive lead that both it was taken as a sort of project dossier, revised project dossier through the senior management team, which it did, and therefore hence arrived in this environment. So what I can say with a high degree of assurance is that now this will be monitored as a project. There's been a full dossier and workbook collated that sits within the project office. It'll be reported to every senior management board, and therefore moving forward it will be open to every degree of scrutiny by yourself and others, Chair.
Good to hear. Thank you. Nick?
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps colleagues, perhaps Stuart Stevens could assist me with my memory problem here. Did we discussed, did we not, about there not being a business case for this? And was there then a business case either created or was in the process of being created? Could somebody remind me on that, please?
So I'm not sure about the business case element of it, Nick. I would have to defer to my colleagues from the portfolio office in terms of that, but I suspect there was not a business case produced at the outset of this. So perhaps whilst I've got the mic, then I'll just add to what Stuart says, Fiona. You're absolutely right. I think this is an absolute case in point in terms of where our processes in terms of initiating and managing major projects have failed. And I think this speaks to a lot of the work that Andy and Curtis are doing in order to rectify that. So that whole premise of having a design authority to make sure that any projects, whilst when they're being thought up or progressed, have to go through that design authority to make sure we've got that top cover, that it fits with the strategy, that it fits with the direction the organisation wants to take, and that all the points of the cost, etc., are considered at that stage. So we're not faced with something that's already down the line before the processes start to get wrapped around us. So ultimately, you heard my views the other day in terms of this, Fiona. This is case in point for everything that we're talking about in terms of how we manage major change going forward.
Yeah, no, that thank you. And I guess the whole business change life cycle piece, we'll pick all that up. Nick, on you go.
Sorry, so what's the answer about the business case? And I do have a subsequent question completely unrelated to this. So, but what are we going to not have one, or are we going to have one?
Andy, do you want to comment in terms of what?
Yeah, quite happy to do that. Andy Main, head of portfolio. So in terms of the business case piece, Nick, I think what we need to do internally is evaluate whether or not retrospectively documenting the business case is something that's going to add that value, or whether or not that sits on the capital programme. I don't actually know where that's sitting at the moment, Nick. I think that's something that we just need to look at internally and come back to you on, to say this is going to be the course of action that we're going to take, i.e. actually documenting and drafting a business case that we can track for the remaining duration of the project. Whatever decision gets taken, you'll get, Change Committee members will get that assurance moving forward. So hopefully that answers that question for you.
Well,
Andy, can I, sorry Nick, can I just say that I would absolutely want to see a business case, a retrospective business case produced, please.
Okay.
Nick, did you want to come back in?
Well, it's possibly a similar comment in so much that I would want to know how we were going to do some benefit tracking, etc., at later days. And if there was another way of doing that, fine. And whether or not the shape, form, and function has to be a business case, I don't know. But so what I'm really then saying or suggesting to you as chair, Fiona, is would this be an appropriate thing to take an action on so we can come back to the next meeting to have something so we know what is going to happen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and if the minute can reflect that certainly the committee chair believes that a retrospective business case would be very sensible. if there is another way of doing it but captures all the key elements, then happy to have that conversation. And Andy, that would be an action for you and Curtis, correct?
For the portfolio office, Chair,
yeah.
Absolutely. And I echo the sentiments that there has to be some mechanism to how we track for the remaining duration of the project. So whether that's in the form of a business case or another, we'll come back with what those recommendations are. But I know Curtis wants to come in this specific point, so we'll let him come in.
Okay, on you go, Curtis.
Thanks, Chair. So Curtis Montgomery, Centre of Excellence Manager. So the intention, I've been working quite closely with the project team and Stuart, and we've been developing the dossier and the work around planning the activities and bringing all the strands together with the requirements and so on. But the next logical step is to actually create the success criteria. So because, as you rightly say, there's no business case, therefore it's not setting out what good looks like and what the objective is of this activity, and it was funded by the government rather than it coming through SFRS budgets. So it's come about, I guess, through a business as usual setting. So what we're doing is working very closely with the team to work up those benefits profiles, link them into success criteria, and then work towards that evaluation at the end of the pilot activity. So I think we probably just rework that, bring it back into the business case, and just tie the two ends of the process together.
No, that sounds good. Thank you. Nick, did you want back in? You had another question.
Mine was an unrelated question. If Andy has anything further to say about that one before I go.
I do, Chair, if that's okay, if I can just close on the second point that you made about major change retrospectively coming into the portfolio office. So just to echo what the DEP had said there, so as previously mentioned, there will be a formal presentation of new governance arrangements around the portfolio function made to SLT in September. Those new governance arrangements will address the intake of major change going forward, so we don't end up in this position in the future. What I would also say, though, is within the interim period, actually we've seen that our governance arrangements were working for the low carbon appliance project because we caught it. We caught it and we didn't let it go any further without it coming under the scrutiny of SMB, SLT and now the Change Committee, whilst we concurrently were working on the design of what that new governance arrangement would look like. So hopefully that gives committee members a little bit of assurance in terms of what it will look like going forward in the future. So I'll just conclude on that, Chair, and let Nick come back in.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Nick, just before I bring you in, Angelina, you had your hand up there. Is it on the same point or is it a different point?
I did.
You're on mute.
Sorry, Angelina Foster, board member and member of this committee. Andy magically answered my question before I'd even asked it. I just wanted to hear that the framework we had seen last week would become in effect a gateway.
Yes.
An utterly unavoidable gateway for all new pipeline proposals, and that's in effect what you've
absolutely
told us. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. This is for probably Stuart Nicholson. Stuart, and this is possibly reflective of the fact we haven't had a business case, but a lot of focus is obviously on the electrical aspect of this vehicle. And I was prompted to this question by your comment that the crews that have been crawling all over it liked it. And then I have my slightly cynical view of crews in all sorts of forms of services, always like something which is shiny and new and is a new thing. Is this a vehicle in both sense of the word for any other new innovations apart from electric drive propulsion? Are we bringing in a new form of kit? Are we doing anything else on the back of this? And I don't want, please, it's probably there are elements of a service delivery question there as well. So I'm not after a lot of detail, more really just a broad overview. Thanks, Stuart.
No, I think it's a great question. Great question. And when I sort of started to become involved with these conversations a couple of months ago, it was one of the very focused questions internally in terms of level of innovation and potential further innovations. I did go back to the original scope in terms of whether it was just therefore to provide an innovative in terms of the drive, various drive to the vehicle, or a whole opportunity to sort of look at how the vehicle is produced and what it looks like and how it feels. It's quite clear from the original scope that it was to provide a standard rescue appliance and take one step at a time, and then, you know, be really focused the innovation on the drive and the electrification of it. So for this vehicle, it is very much about the electrification, and if it's any kind of feedback from Emergency One, because this is very much cutting edge for heavy fleet, then arguably there is a view that is the best way to take it, just one step at a time on this occasion with the drive. And there's been a lot of sort of innovation actually in terms of, without getting too technical, around the drive shaft and then also the sort of the electro cells. So it's a long way of saying that there's been a lot of internal debate about it, Nick. But when I look at in terms of picking up the project, it was quite clear that the innovation and really was focusing on delivering a successful product to the community, one with great deal of reliability, and just focusing on a different mode of driving the appliance, purely electrical.
Great. Okay, thank you, Stuart. I'll put my aspirations for a head-up display and a visor on my helmet off to one side. Thank you.
I think I'll probably finish off by saying very much, and again, we've had the conversations with Curtis on this, and now that, you know, that level of governance is really getting wrapped around it, that we've got to be really open our minds in the evaluation stage and start really sort of looking at what is in the art of the possible here in terms of in the future. And we've already opened up those conversations with the partners such as the Scottish Government and also Transport Scotland in terms of, you know, if there is the future opportunities, what is in the art of the possible of being more innovative moving forward with any other vehicles. But again, I think that can be very much captured in the evaluation with Curtis and Andy and the team, and we can provide that sort of conversation in this arena through the evaluation and what success looks like.
Yeah, and we could also look at that within the SDC as well. But thank you, Chair.
Fiona, can I just add to what
Stuart
said? Nick, it was a great question, and it's something that Stuart and I talked about at length when this was getting developed. And I would really like to see us push the boundaries in terms of innovation, particularly around about firefighting innovation and appliances from a service delivery perspective. And I think there's a bit of a missed opportunity. Stuart's talked about the premise of this appliance was around about EV propulsion, maybe a bit of a missed opportunity. So I'd like to really see us from now on pushing the boundaries as hard as possible. An organisation of our size, in terms of, you know, a UK Fire and Rescue Service and a World Fire and Rescue Service, we should be setting the tone and bringing in different types of innovation and working with academia and providers in order to do that. So that's just my thoughts.
Good, thank you. Any other questions on the low carbon appliance? Oh, good, thank you very much, Stuart. That takes us on then to people, training, finance and assets, and Scott Semple. Oh, there it is. It's just magically popped up on my screen. Welcome, Scott, and over to you.
Afternoon, Chair, and afternoon, everybody. I'm obviously not the person you would normally see providing this update. It's usually Paul McGovern, the programme lead, but with that, hopefully I'm able to present as detailed as an update as I can against the paper that's been submitted for the committee and answer any questions that you might have. And I'm conscious with that as a committee, you'll be familiar with the programme and the updates and progress that's been made as Paul has done so in the past. And the paper presented today just is an extension of that, a continuation of that, and provides a further update on some of the highlights and activity and work streams that Paul and the programme team have been leading on for us. A fair bit of detail in the paper, and whilst I have no intention of going through it line by line, I'd just maybe like to draw by way of introduction the committee's attention to a couple of the highlights, and maybe starting off first with the dialogue that we're currently having with Scottish Government. We're having dialogue on a couple of fronts, and I'll come on to that a wee bit later in relation to the audits, but I think obviously the first one, you'll be aware that we had previously reached out to the Scottish Government, who had recently procured, or who have recently procured Oracle as the ERP with the intention of trying to understand, was there an opportunity there for us as an organisation to align with that procurement, and is that an option that could be considered? You may remember that first reach out didn't go as far as maybe we thought it would. I don't think Scottish Government at the time were necessarily positioned to offer as much encouragement by way of exploring that conversation. However, following the recent announcements, obviously around spending review, SFRS have reached out again with a view to exploring that opportunity with the Scottish Government. So as it stands just now, and we have opened up that dialogue again through our procurement team. Interestingly, there's been verbal and written dialogue between both parties, and Scottish Government are at the stage that they want that dialogue to be formalised, so they're just absolutely clear on what the discussion, what the ask might be. And whilst I don't have as detailed an update as I'd like, as recently as Friday late afternoon, we got an email back from Scottish Government in terms of getting a sense of where they're at with it. Interestingly, they're keen to explore it from a shared services perspective going forward. Initially, from a SFRS perspective, we were probably more interested in, if you like, aligning with procuring licenses on the back of what they purchase. So it's an interesting place at the moment. So we're basically just trying to understand each other's position, but we'll do that on a more formal basis. But what I would say, there'll be a more detailed, I think those conversations and that dialogue will develop over the upcoming weeks, and I would hope we would have a more detailed update for the committee at the next meeting in terms of where that's going. So just to give you some assurance that dialogue's been opened up by ourselves for a second time. And maybe with that, just with my reference to the spending review, just to give the committee assurance that Paul and the team have been asked by the programme board to revisit the plan and consider a number of things, likes of some of the options we've got, in particular the phasing of the programme. With the work that's been undertaken to date and looking at our system requirements, what we would want going forward, we know there's a number of areas in there that we're looking that we would be looking to procure functionality on, likes of recruitment, case management, performance management, appraisal that we don't have. So we're just considering options there around about, well, what if they weren't in the brief that we would go out to market with, for example? What would that mean in terms of phasing it in time of the programme? And if they were included, would we take that over a further period? So there's a number of options, whether it's down to providers that are available, system functionality, what our ask is. We're just taking that opportunity to go back and review that. So that work's just started. And as I say, hopefully over the weeks and months ahead, and by the time we come back to the next change committee, there'll be a further update for us to share with you. But I guess just to say, we're looking at options around that. I think it also links in then, that takes me, into just by way of an update of our contract with our current provider, and we're looking to extend that contract further in terms of recognising some of the timing considerations we've got there. And again, this is progressing. It's been quite slow. We've had to chase our current provider a couple of times just for clarity on that, but we are looking to extend that for a period of time that will give us a bit of comfort in relation to if we were to change or to review some of those milestones and timings around the programme, we would have that available to us. But what I would like to come on to, and one of the reasons that the time is significant for us, is you'll see from the paper 2 references in there to the Scottish Government Technical Assurance Framework and SFRS. These both of the audit programmes that we are required, because of the organisation we are and the size of this programme and cost required to go through. An awful lot of work's gone into prepping SFRS in advance of the TAF audit, which colleagues on the committee will know we've got through the first level. We're prepping for the second one, and DSSS is a different audit entirely, but an awful lot of work going in from the programme team to support us and prep us in advance of going through those audits. It's quite straightforward. If we don't get through the audits, the pause button or the stop button gets pressed, and we don't go forward. So really important that we are as prepared as we can be. And as I say, that from the programme team has been a significant piece of work. Also impacts and timelines and progress and milestones for us, but all worth it. And the last area I'd maybe just like to highlight, if I've got time, Chair, is just what's outlined there in section 3.2, and something you'll be seeing for the first time in relation to the work that's just been undertaken to further develop and align the programme vision, values and our principles, and importantly, just as I joined the call there, the benefits. And I think as a programme team, we've always been acutely aware of the importance and need to be able to articulate the benefits any investment in new systems will deliver for the SFRS. This was before the spending review. But obviously the spending review challenges us as a programme to go as far as we can with the benefits and value it will bring to SFRS, and make sure that we're clear on what they are. And I think now the types of benefits SFRS can expect to see are better articulated in the document that were produced there in relation to the vision, principles and values and benefits. And with that, my final word on that would be to extend my thanks to Andy and Curtis, who both took us through that session and helped with that work. And it's been of great value, not just to myself and Lynn, but to everybody within the programme and the wider board. So with that, Chair, I'll pause it and happy to invite any questions that the committee might have. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. I've got a couple. The technical assurance piece, what are the timescales for that?
I should know that. It's coming. We are preparing. I think it's October. I don't have the exact date, but it's October.
Right. Okay, no, that's fine.
It's the same for DSS as well. Okay.
Other questions where you mentioned the contract with the current provider. Is that for HR and payroll specifically, or
it's for HR? It's with a current HR.
Yeah, that's the one that expires in September 23. Is that right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. And another question: the Scottish Government Oracle ERP, is that HR and payroll again, or is it broader than that, or what's the kind of high level scope of that?
I don't know. I don't have the detail what Scottish Government have procured, but Oracle as a system has got far broader capability and functionality than just people and payroll. Yeah.
Right. Okay. But that, I mean, it's good to hear that us knocking on the door again has borne fruit, and because there are specific references in the resource spending review about shared services and opportunities for joint procurements and all of that good stuff. And the other thing, I just wanted to say that at the last meeting in May, we did urge Paul and the team to look at phasing. I think we called it chunking, but phasing basically same sort of thing. And it sounds as though that's absolutely what you're doing, because we continue to have concerns about the size and the complexity and the cost of PTFAS, and obviously the resource spending review puts that under even more focus. That's all I have, and I was so busy asking my questions I didn't see whose hand went up first. Stuart, we'll go with you. Ballingall, that is.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the thing. Yes, Stuart Ballingall, board member. Fiona, you've just asked my question actually, but I wanted to reiterate that I'm very uneasy about this, the complexity and the scale of it, and we need to find a way to ease that unease very quickly. And I'm not convinced that a review of timing and staging and ordering of a programme is going to answer those questions. I think we need to have a real good think about how we get everyone over the line that this is a programme we should be moving forward with, because the scale of it and the complexity of it is mind-boggling.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. Scott, I read with interest the I think it's the presentation slide, isn't it, on the vision, values, principles, benefits. Can I just make a couple of observations, and feel free, this is just a very subjective personal view. Our values, I immediately started to read our values trying to look to tie them in to the services our values, and they're clearly different. And I just wonder whether or not that's something that was done consciously, whether or not that's something that we just need to have an eye on, off to one side. So they're somewhat different from safety, teamwork, respect, and innovation. However, I'll just park that there. That doesn't necessarily require a thought. Sorry, a reply. It was really a comment about just sort of two lots of our values. The other one, smart benefits. I get the idea. These are examples of what the smart benefits. What I'm after is a little bit of assurance that when we've got a great number of reductions and a great number of improves in there across the whole line, is that behind the scenes on that, at some considerable detail, are current measurements and benchmarking, so we can go back and say, yes, we did improve the time. The reduction in time to deliver standard business processes has improved from X to Y. And if we can do that, we'll have a lot of happy faces. But as long as that is, I'm seeking some assurance to know that that's done in the background.
Yeah, come back without doubt. Like, that's the proof in the pudding stuff, isn't it? In terms of being able to really articulate and, you know, I keep going on. Curtis and Andy will talk about this a lot. You know, even just something as straightforward as time to recruit, and how long that takes us. And again, there's wider conversations even within my own directorate and pod around about performance indicators and getting a better understanding of some of those things that we want to measure across the whole people environment. But I think with the system in particular, we are very much focused on what benefits the system will bring us, whether that's quicker, faster, cheaper, less hands, whatever the case may be. But we'll have that. We would want to develop that matrix for you for sure.
Thank you. Andy and Curtis, you stuck your hands up. Is it on this specific point before I bring Angelina in? Yes? Yeah.
Yes, Chair. Yeah.
On you go.
Thank you. Andy Main, Head of Portfolio. So I think just in response to your observation, Nick, and as well what you alluded to, Stuart, earlier around it's not just a case of changing the phasing or chunking the programme down that's the concern. You know, we can slice and dice how we want to approach the work in any way, shape or form. But I think committee members have heard me allude to many times before, is about taking a benefits-led approach to what we choose to invest in. And that's what's critically important here. So back to your point, Nick, how do we know from the PT FAST programme that there's going to be really measurable benefits that we're going to deliver as a result of the level of investment that we choose to put into this programme as an organisation? And I think we touched on it a little bit on Thursday last week as well, about the appetite of the organisation and the board around when we would expect to realise that benefit, you know, in terms of a payback, you know, the time it actually takes to realise becomes important, becomes an important decision point as well. So I think, and Curtis can speak to this because I know it's work that's ongoing at the moment. As part of the new benefits framework that we've designed, we are starting to work with teams on that detail in the background, Nick, so that we do have specific benefits data. We do have targets that we're trying to achieve around that. And for me, that would be the lead-in to the executive making the decision around what we're going to do around this programme and to what extent, right? So we know that we have these sets of challenges within the organisation. We want to go after those challenges, and here's the appetite in terms of what we're willing to invest in, all in the context of the resource spending review that we have. So it's just to give yourself, Nick, a little bit of assurance that we do now have the capability to drive those smart benefits that maybe we didn't have 6 months, 12 months ago. And to your point, Stuart, it's not just a case of how are we going to organise the work, it needs to be more meaningful than that. So hopefully that's a little bit of assurance to yourself, Chair, and members, and I'll let Curtis come in and add his viewpoint.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Chair. So to add to that, we've been going out as portfolio office team and supporting Scott and Paul and the programme team and going into pod and finance and training department and actually going specifically into a bit more detail about those benefits categories that are contained within that one pager. So the one pager was set out because we felt we lacked a bit of focus within the programme on what we're actually trying to target in terms of improvement. So it wasn't just system replacements, but actually what are the, I suppose, those principles we want to lay across everything we do in the programme. So it's joined up and we target the correct things. So we've actually got SMART objectives set out for a couple of business areas now as well. We've got metrics and measures that support it. The programme team have been working on collating a business process catalogue since I think it's since last year now. So there's actually a lot of detail and information sitting there. So we're actually targeting the high yield business processes end to end across the organisation rather than just specifically within each area. So what that allows us to then do is really work out what we think is feasible in terms of how much we can save, how much more efficient, what cost savings, what does the target operating model look like around these teams, which we can then hand off to our client side partner who's helping to develop that blueprint. And so that will set out hopefully some options that might tell us if we spend X, Y, and Z, this is what the future could look like if we implement it. So that's basically it in a nutshell of how we're doing the benefits and the measures, Nick, but also thinking big picture and planning in terms of the blueprint.
I think that is really encouraging, particularly for me, the bit around high yield end to end, so that, you know, the real end to end process is not just looking in directorates or wherever. So that's certainly music to my ears, and clearly the whole benefits led approach is the rubber is hitting the road, which is really good to hear it as well. So thank you. Thank you for that.
And sorry, Chair, I can answer the values question as well. So we wanted to use the word outcomes, but it was felt because we had strategic outcomes in the strategic plan, we just thought we'd use something else. So actually, it's just semantics.
Okay, thank you. Angelina, your hand's gone down. Have you heard an answer to your question somewhere?
I have, spookily yet again, Andy. I'm seriously worried about his mind reading skills, but thank you.
No, that's excellent. Good. Any other questions for Scott? No? Good. Okay. Thank you very much, Scott. Rumour has it you're off to your dream job. I'm very jealous.
Yeah,
Enjoy.
yeah, it is. Yes, sad to be leaving, but yes, leaving this in safe hands, I think. So thank you, Fiona. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Have a good afternoon, everyone. See you later.
Thank you, Scott.
Cheers.
Bye. I'm in mine.
Who said that?
Curtis.
Can we minute that?
I was just going to say, in a minute.
Okay. General reports, agenda item 9. Andy.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair. Andy Main, Head of Portfolio. So this agenda item looks at the progress that the portfolio function has been making along the roadmap. What I would ask committee members to do is, rather than me going through the detail of that report, of which there's quite a lot of it, is I'll just invite any specific questions that committee members may have. What I would say is that over the course of probably the last 2 weeks now, with strategy day and different sessions, you would have heard a lot of the work that's already in flight, but maybe there's been an opportunity to let some of that percolate, and if there's any specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Questions for Andy? Nick?
Chair, Andy, it's not so much a question, it's just a general observation that I would just want to reiterate what the Chair has just said there, really, about it feels like that we are gaining momentum at a reasonable pace now. And that's really pleasing for those who are sitting on this committee, and I'm sure for others as well, but particularly for committee members. And it's been great, and I've really enjoyed the conversations that particularly you and Curtis have been feeding into over the last couple of times, particularly around the workshop and then into the strategy day. So thank you both for your input. And I don't really have a question. I'm just making that point, really. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Angelina?
Thank you, Fiona. And I would have thought after last week I wouldn't have had any questions. However, when I read this report, it might just be something to do with the layout, but it's at 3.3. When I read it for today's meeting, it made me wonder whether I have up to now misunderstood. When we speak about years, I always presume we're talking about a financial year. So 21 would be 21-22 and 22 would be 2023 and so forth. And therefore Q1, Q2, Q3 would follow. When I reread today's layout, it made me think, good Lord, is this actually calendar years? Sorry, it's a very basic question that I should have polished off months ago, but it was like a fresh query that landed in my head. So you get the question, now is this calendar years, these quarters, or fiscal, or what?
They are fiscal, and I hold my hands up to ensure that I make that adjustment on the next report.
No, that's grand. That's the answer I was hoping for, if you like, because it really shifts some of the stuff if your answer had been the other. So thank you.
Any other questions? We've said this before, but it's worth repeating, really starting to take shape. Hugely helpful and more meaningful in terms of the information and the level of, it's at the right level with the right information, and really looking forward to having a complete set across all of the projects that are ongoing. So thank you. A verbal update on the internal audit stuff, Andy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So in terms of the internal audit, what to say about that? Hopefully all members have had the opportunity to read the report itself. That should have been circulated with everyone. If it hasn't, please let me know. In terms of the findings and the recommendations made by ASETS, there was nothing, I think I've articulated this before, there was nothing that came as a surprise with regards to that. And hopefully what members will be able to see is actually the alignment from the progress reporting on the roadmap to what some of the findings and the recommendations have been on the internal audit itself. So in actual fact, when you look at the internal audit report, you think, jeepers, there's a lot of work to be done there, but actually a lot of it is already in train, and we're actually starting to bear some of the fruit of that already. So hopefully that gives members a bit of assurance. What I would add that the members are already excited on is there's a bit of work to do to resource the function to a level to get us to where we want to be. But I think the executive as well as committee members are fully aware of that, and the team are aware of that as well. So we just continue to work through that roadmap, and as we work through the roadmap, it will start to address some of the findings on the report. I'm more than happy to take any questions from any of the members in terms of the contents of that.
I just have one question, which is really about governance. I'm assuming it goes the management actions in response to the internal audit report. Does that go back to Audit and Risk Committee?
Yeah.
It does. It also goes to Good Governance Board internally prior to going back to ARAC.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions on the internal audit stuff? Nope. Okay, thanks, Andy. That takes us on to item 10 and risk, Portfolio Office Risk Report. You again, Andy.
Thanks, Chair. Again, members are asked to note the contents of the report itself. What members will note is that, through the last few reporting periods, internally this has been reflective of a transition of our risk reporting at the project level to align with corporate risk reporting, hopefully making that a little bit easier for our different forums to digest. From the previous reporting period to this reporting period, there's been a downward trend in terms of risk. There's been a reduction from 26 to 22 critical risks in the portfolio register. Happy to take any questions that either I can answer directly or any of the exec leads on the call can answer for you.
We've got an audit and risk workshop tomorrow afternoon, which I'm sure we'll be exploring some of this further. Stuart.
Thanks, Fiona, and thanks, Andy. That's really encouraging what you're saying about the reduction in risks. Basically, does your sense think that's an accurate picture?
No, honestly, but there's other factors to that, Stuart. So I think in terms of the workshop that you'll have tomorrow, it's about having some meaningful dialogue around what that trend's actually telling us, the data and the content within these risk registers. But something that we touched on last Thursday is when we went through the portfolio assessment, we spoke lengthy about dependencies. And how dependencies can really be the hidden factor within an organisation that drives a level of risk and a level of issues. And I think there's quite a high level of dependency across the project portfolio that's perhaps not been reflected yet from a risk perspective. And that's something that we are working through at the moment and endeavouring to drive those conversations internally. But we're really going to have to persevere with that. So in short, no, Stuart, but hopefully to give you a bit of assurance, we're trying to change the narrative around it.
Yeah, okay, that's helpful. And clearly we'd all encourage you to keep doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Angelina?
Thank you. So I have a horrible feeling I've raised this point before. And I say that not in a critical sense, but I think I must have a mental block with it. So could you bear with me, Andy, whilst you coach me out of whatever mental block I am wallowing in here? But it's the distinction between a risk and when something is an issue. And there's quite a few bits and bobs here where in my, if you like, real life grasp of stuff, it's way beyond a risk and is now an issue. So for example, strategic risk 1 at the bottom of page 5, just to suggest that we take a practical example. When I read that description, and I know we're going to talk about this issue later on this afternoon, but it's quite a strong example of the loop that my head keeps going round here. A risk of failure to deliver such that there'll be a delay. I find myself going, surely that should be on a page titled issue or crystallized risk, rather than this stepped back stage of highly rated risk. So, and I'm quietly driving myself potty going round this loop. So could you sort of save my sanity and just, because you're clearly bringing a different framework to this, so can you just help me there? And there's the few that all fall into that category for me.
Absolutely, Angelina. So I'm Andy Main, Head of Portfolio. So just to confirm, you're not wallowing in a mental block. I think there is a good bit of organisational education that we need to go through here in terms of making the distinction between risk and issues. A lot of what we have referenced as risk at the moment, the proverbial has already hit the fan. And so therefore we need to be looking at what corrective actions and remedial actions that we need to take to get that back within whatever tolerance that we define as an organisation is acceptable to us. Interestingly, Chair, you mentioned about your workshop tomorrow with regards to risk, and one of the recommendations that I've been having through discussion with David Johnson is the introduction of dedicated portfolio risk reviews. And the purpose of that being is that we actually, on a continuous basis, have a meaningful conversation around what some of those critical risks are within the organisation, but also trying to get a grasp of whether a risk has actually indeed materialised into being an issue, and what do we then do with that from an escalation perspective within the organisation, and how do we manage it out effectively. So at the moment we're going through a period of let's get everybody foundationally into a consistent practice of how we report on risk. Okay, so we've now got all the project risk logs transitioned over to the new format to allow us to give better visibility of that. How do we then introduce meaningful conversations around the challenge that you have, Angelina, and not just yourself, but others within the organisation, to say how do we wrap around an appropriate management response to that? Because the other factor with regards to that David and I have been discussing is we have a lot of governance arrangements within the organisation. So part of the conversation is how do we route risk within the organisation effectively to get to the right subgroup or to the right executive board for those decisions to be made? How do we make sure that none of those risks or issues actually slip between the cracks because of all of those governance arrangements? So these are all challenges that I think that we're faced with today, but again, just to try and give members assurance that these conversations are going on in the background about how we can make some of those improvements. Hopefully that answers a bit of your question. It's not a solution yet, but it's absolutely on the radar.
Can I just check, if I may, Fiona, can I check then, Andy, that I've interpreted that response as you intended? Does that mean that this committee could expect in the foreseeable to see some of the current items on these risk registers appear no longer as risks, but as crystallized risks and therefore issues with a different form of management commentary beside it? Is that something we can anticipate on the back of what you've said?
That would absolutely be the
okay.
intention.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In that case, that's great. Thank you.
For the next meeting, Andy, next committee meeting.
Let me come back to you on that, Chair.
Okay. Yeah, Ali, can you just capture that as an action for Andy to come back on that?
Yeah.
Thank you. That's very useful. Thank you. I too have had mental treacle where risks and issues are concerned. It's a painful thing. Okay, committee aligned directorate risks. David.
Sorry, can I just come in, Chair, before you move on, please?
Oh, sorry, Curtis. Apologies. Yeah, on you go.
Yeah, it's okay. Just to really add to what Andy was saying, we've introduced into the new workbook that the projects are working with an issue log that sits beside the risk log. So it's actually being separated out, and it is difficult for people to get their head around when something actually, as Andy says, hits the fan, but when it has hit the fan, it moves into that issue log and can't be separated out. But that's only being implemented for new projects at the moment. So we've got two that currently run with it. One is low carbon appliance, and the other one is going to be iHub when it comes in web.
Okay, helpful. Thank you. David.
Thank you, Chair. David Lockhart, Temporary Director of Service Development. So committee members will have reviewed the directorate aligned risk log. You will note that in terms of directorate risks, there are 3 new risks identified, these being SDD 005 and 006, which are both aligned to the Emergency Services Mobile Communication Platform project, and SDD 008, which is aligned to the continuous improvement culture within the organisation. In addition to this, there are 2 increases across the directorate risks, and this is the renamed SDD 001, which has seen an increase from 16 to 20 in terms of resource within the directorate to support the work being progressed, and also SDD 004, which relates to, again, the organisational culture within the organisation and the resources to progress this. That provides the overview in terms of those directorate risks that align to the committee, but happy to take any questions from any committee members.
Thanks, David. Any questions? No? Okay, thank you. Gosh, we're galloping through this. That takes us on to the rolling forward plan. Ali.
Thank you, Chair. So just to confirm that the committee are content with the forward plan as is seen there. Just a point to add, just in relation to safe and well, and that's for to be added for the November meeting, just in terms of an update in regard to the valuation of that piece. Other than that, Chair, as is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Has anybody spotted items for consideration at future IGF board and strategy day meetings? Nothing extra? No, good. Back to you, Ali. Review of action. Oh, Fiona. Yeah, on you go, Stuart.
When does PTFAS go to the strategy day or the board?
I don't know.
Chair, if you don't mind, Ali Cameron, Board Support Manager, it was scheduled to go forward in June, but just due to some further discussions that we've been having around that, it was on as one of the actions actually that it'll be reflected in a future strategy day. That date is yet to be confirmed.
Yeah, so yeah, PTFAS was on its own on the last agenda. I think we had this conversation where and I suggested it be pulled because there's a broader prioritisation conversation ongoing. My assumption is that broader prioritisation conversation will be continuing at the additional dates that we've got in for board over strategy days over the course of the next few months.
That's correct, Chair. And it's on the private action log, Chair.
Yeah, that's correct, Fiona.
Answer your question, Stuart?
It does answer it, but I suppose I've got a question mark as to whether the board will know enough about PTFAS to actually be able to prioritise it in amongst the other projects.
Chair, I'm happy to pick that up and
yeah, on you go, Stuart.
No, I'll provide an update to committee members off table, if that's okay. Just in terms of that timeline, I'll just clarify it, Stuart, and get back to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Review of actions, Ali.
Thank you, Chair. So Ali Cameron, Board Support Manager. Just in relation to this meeting, I've captured a total of 3 actions for the committee to confirm, referring to agenda item 8.1, and the action arising being clarity on the approach to the low emission or low carbon appliance, and proof of concept in relation to a retrospective business case or alternative at this stage, and that lead for that is the programme office and due date being November meeting. The next action being, and we're referring to agenda item 9.1, the portfolio progress report, an update to bring clarity for the reporting period, and that and being aligned to the fiscal year, again to the lead being the programme office and due date November 2022. And then in reference to agenda item 10.1, risks and issues materialising, and just an update with regard to the development of this work and focus. And again, the lead being the programme office and due date for that being November 2022. So just to confirm that they've been captured accurately enough, and there's nothing else. Thank you, Chair.
They certainly align with my scribbles. Has anybody spotted anything that's an action that Ali hasn't covered? Good, thank you. Date of next meeting, 10th of November, scary. We are quite well ahead of schedule. Oh, Nick.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, Chair. I was just going to say something at the end, but go ahead and finish what you were saying, and then I'll just say mine a little bit.
Well, I was going to suggest that we take a 5-minute break and then go into the private session at 3:15, and hopefully, and that's assuming, Ali, that Gary is available. Gary Mackay and Andy.
Chair, I'll just make contact with them just now, just to establish that, but I don't know if there's been a.
Could we?
And if I will check. Come back.
Is there any chance we could make that a 10-minute break, Fiona? Would that be?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good
but
grief.
I was just going to say, Chair, that I think this is a very personal view. I think one of the reasons that we've gone through this in fairly short order is that we are really beginning to get clarity and structure around what it is, the sense of the committee. And that's not to say we haven't had degrees of this in the past, but I feel that we are really moving towards something which structured, it answers the questions. A lot of our previous discussions over many years have been around the edges of process and about boring people who listen to us about benefits realization and all this sort of stuff. And actually now we're getting that, and we're getting it. And one of the and even to the extent that Andy's able to mind read Angelina, it's fantastic. And we're actually getting this structure in place and facilitating quick and efficient meetings. So I think it's excellent. I just thought I'd say that.
No, I definitely have a sense of a kind of marching rhythm that we're getting into, hugely fueled by getting a better level of information, and yeah, so I echo that, Nick, and thanks for saying that.